This is Matt with UCLA's Education Outreach, and for this tutorial I will be explaining how to calculate areas within your digitized campus project. So let's begin. To first start, you should have your full layers here on the side, all that you've done. Hopefully you've digitized more of the campus than I have at this point. But you can see I do have a parking lot, a couple of the buildings, and some sidewalk features, or sidewalk data layers. If you happen to put all of those within one data layer, that is completely fine for this tutorial, since we will be at the end adding up the square or the area of all of the features into one single number. That is perfectly fine for this tutorial as long as you created separate data layers for impermeable, which is water resistant or water cannot get through, and permeable layers. So permeable would be like grass, something water can penetrate through. So for now, we're just going to go ahead and first start off by calculating the area of our sidewalks data layer, which would be this one here. You can see I only did one, but it'll still work. So you're going to go ahead and push this button right here called Perform Analysis. You can always push up here and it brings up the same menu. Then go down to Use Proximity, and we're going to go ahead and create a buffer. Now this buffer is going to be extremely small. The whole reason we're doing this little bit of a workaround is because ArcGIS Online doesn't currently allow us to calculate areas directly from the map notes, but if we create a buffer layer first, or just a new data layer based off of the old map notes one that we digitized by hand, it will allow us to perform some basic calculations on it. So let's go ahead and start that. We're in the Create Buffers area. And since we want to make this very small, first of all, we're going to go with meters, and we're going to do something like 0.001 meters. Something that is so small, it really would have very little impact, or next to no impact, on the final calculations for this project. And then go ahead and up here in this one, where it says here, you're actually going to choose the layer we currently want to calculate. So right now we're in sidewalks. Just make sure it's clicked on the layer you'd like to calculate. And once you adjust your box here to say meters instead of miles, go ahead and push Run Analysis after you create a name for your resulting layer. The standard name is Buffer of Sidewalks, which is the same thing, but I'm just going to go ahead and push Test. Perfect. And once you're done with that, go ahead and push Run Analysis. It can take a second, depending on how complex the geometry is, or just the polygons and shapes are, but it should be done in just a second. There we are. There we are. Sorry about that. So once that is finished here, you can see it created a whole separate layer than your sidewalks layer. It's the exact same thing, and if you zoom in, you can see that it is a very, very small difference that is almost imperceivable, the difference between the two layers. But what this allows us to do is now when you go hover over this data layer, you can actually see we have a lot more options here, rather than the sidewalks, which only has this one. So once you have this created buffer for all three of your layers, you're going to go ahead and push this button right here called Show Table. Now this is going to show you what is called the attribute table. It looks a little complicated. It looks like a Excel sheet. Mine only has one line in it because it's actually showing the individual features within a data layer. So if I were to have done the school buildings, you would actually see three here because I have three buildings digitized. However, this data layer only has one feature within it, and that is this one sidewalk here. And if you scroll to the left, or to the right, sorry, you'll actually see a number of different columns. One of them at the very end is called area in square kilometers. Now, while I know that says 0.00, that is just because it is such a small polygon that it's not actually represented in that size. However, if you were to click on it and go down here into statistics, it would actually tell you in a little bit more precision the sum of all of the values. We only have one value here, or one feature, so the sum is the same thing as this one feature. But you would also get the sum if there's, say, 10 or 15 features, as might be your buildings layer. Once you've actually done this, you've successfully calculated the area in square kilometers, at least of your sidewalks or of one data layer. So with this information, actually the best thing to do is to actually go ahead and copy this this sum here, and then just go ahead and make a note of that. So I actually have a spreadsheet open over here that I created just for the purpose of writing down my notes. So for this one, you can actually see it's the area in square kilometers. And I also went ahead and created a little spreadsheet that calculates the square meters and square centimeters of that area as well for me. So it kind of helps out. I don't have to do quite as much work. Perfect. So you're going to go ahead and do that exact same thing with the 3 other data layers. So once you've successfully created a buffer layer for all 3 of your different layers, you can see I have mine here, school buildings, parking lots, and sidewalks. And you have go ahead and ran statistics on all 3 layers and taken note of the sum, as I'm doing here for my last um, calculation, this one of area of school buildings. Go ahead and put them into whatever notes or area that you have. Just write them down on a side piece of paper. And then we will show you how to convert them into square meters or square centimeters for that matter that you can use later on. I just simply already, like I said, created this Excel sheet, but the purpose of which is actually pretty handy because it automatically fills in all of this information for me. But it's actually very basic because once you actually input the data here in these columns, which is straight from ArcGIS Online, the computer will calculate it, or Excel will calculate it for me. This one is very simple. It's just this exact value here times 1,000,000. So you can see here 1 followed by 6 zeros. Just simply because every 1 square kilometer is 1,000,000 square meters. Michelle went through a video explaining the details a little bit further about that, but I just created a simple sheet because I'm a little bit lazy like that. At the end of the calculations, once you're going to convert to square meters, you can actually go ahead and add up all 3, so school buildings, parking lots, or sidewalks, or if you have it all within one data layer, then I suppose it made it a little bit easier for you actually. And go ahead and create a total. I once again used Excel. And all of your guys' totals should be much larger than mine. You can see because I only have a very small portion of the campus actually digitized. You guys will have much larger numbers and honestly should be a little bit of variance between any individual student's project, just because even the smallest click 1 or 2 pixel values over can actually cause a huge calculation difference in area. This is where you would also, if you had to get that finer precision, this is where you would have had a GPS unit in the field, and you would have actually recorded the individual corners of the building using a GPS system to get very precise data, because this is where that precise data would have actually come into play to create a very accurate area model. So after you've calculated all of this and your total, you'll actually go ahead and use this number for a future video as to how we will calculate rainfall runoff off of campus. But you have successfully calculated the area in square meters of digitized surface or impermeable surfaces on the campus that at least that you've digitized.